Call this EA Directors meeting for Thursday, March 27th to order. And I'll read the First Nations land acknowledgement. TNRD acknowledges that we are connected with many First Nations communities across our vast regional district. Today, we are located on the Tecumseh-Secwépemc territory situated within the unceded ancestral lands of Secwépemc Nation. The TNRD appreciates the partnership that we have with Tecumseh-Secwépemc and respect the territory and land on which we gather today. Okay, any additions to the agenda? Okay, just got a few comments. I got back on Monday. If anybody had ever told me I was going to go to the Antarctic and back, I would have said, yeah, probably not in my lifetime. Great experience. And I'm so glad I live in Canada. It's nice to go and see the world. And I recommend it to everybody. And then when you get home, you should really appreciate where we live. It's such a beautiful spot in the world. Anyway, that was basically a vacation comment. Okay, the minutes for January 22nd. What's that?
Director selling good news.
Okay, they'll write it down.
Okay.
Okay, unless you want it. You're doing a great job. Thanks for being here. Anyway, call a motion. All those in favor? Carried. Reports, rural and remote internal or internet connectivity. Is that Jamie, you're doing that part?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. This has been added to the agenda based on the discussion at the Committee of the Whole meeting on February 21st. So there was direction from the Committee of the Whole, two directions that we received at that. One, that this topic come back to the EA committee for further discussion. And the other was that we invite delegations from industry to present at the Committee of the Whole at the next meeting. So we have received or put invites out to both Rogers, TELUS, and Connected Communities, the provincial organization that administers the grant program for connectivity. And they have all tentatively confirmed that they'll attend the June Committee of the Whole meeting. So we could look forward to that. So for this meeting, there's no new information being presented. The report that's attached is the identical report that was sent to the February 21st meeting, but it was the EA director's desire to have further discussion at this meeting. So the one additional piece of information that was requested at the Committee of the Whole was information about the village of Caslow, which we've included in an information sheet from the province on that project. So nothing further from staff. Back to you, Chair.
Any discussion? Go ahead, Director Grenier.
Thank you, Chair. I was reviewing the report, and that report that was prepared before in 2021, I think was for the most part talking about terrestrial connectivity with communities with fiber optic. And the issues that we've been talking about around this board table in 2024 is about the opportunity to establish cell tower service and cellular connection through hubs and through satellite, which is yet another technology that's emerging. And I think in the last few meetings, we've heard that, from directors like Director Blackwell, that the technology is moving along very quickly. We see in our time terrestrial, cellular, satellite, and the recent CRTC decision sort of reinforces the notion because it says in the current situation of the disconnected Tranquille, pay this money. We're monitoring it over the next 3 years. We expect there to be some development, and tell us we're still watching to see how you can provide service in the future. And if I've paraphrased that correctly, I think that we, as the TNRD, ought to be, play a supporting role in continuing to press that. I have received numerous emails and calls from the residents in Tranquil Valley saying, hey, with this recent decision, when will we see, for instance, the additional funds, the additional $4,500, so that helps us along with that. They haven't yet received that. And I'm delighted to hear that we have industry and the provincial government attending to this. So I think it would be really important for areas that we've identified with those potential cell towers that we keep the advocacy role going. And I would say that at least in my area, where we as directors have discretion to help advance the advocacy from a financial perspective, where we have that capability, we want to continue on with that. I don't think we want to spend money trying to deploy a fiber optic network solution as had been talked about back in 2021. But I do think if we could be a catalyst for cell tower connectivity or for satellite solutions for our rural people, I think we're the ones that are hearing it from the one side, the constituents, and if we can help advocate for that. So I don't want to take our foot off the pedal from where we are and maybe even step it up a little bit if the opportunity presents itself. I don't want to own these assets, but I sure want to be a part of the solution to getting people connected. So if you feel that way, please support that idea.
Any other discussion from the board? I don't know if everybody's noticed that between Merritt and Kamloops now, they've now put in a fiber line along the edge of the freeway. According to Robin Smith, they've negotiated putting fiber over into Logan Lake from that connection. So those are the sort of opportunities, if we can look and find where there's already fiber lines where they can be run into a community. I think we need to find out exactly how many communities have that ability. I know when we had the discussion with when they were putting the pipeline through, there was supposed to be a lot of new connectivity from the fiber that they ran down the pipeline. I'm not sure how many communities had the ability to take advantage of the connectivity there or not, but I haven't heard if anybody has any information on that. That would be great.
I just can only speak for myself, but Blue River did get high-speed fiber optic because of the pipeline coming through. And there's communities along that could be connected that haven't been connected at this time.
Do you know why they weren't connected? Was it
I
not a
don't know.
request or they just, is there any way we could deal with the communities that the connectivity is there, but maybe it hasn't been asked for? I don't know. Any suggestions from the staff how we might handle that? Director Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Just to add to Director Grenier, I've been in contact with the NDIT. I'm on the board of directors there, so they've been doing tremendous work up in the north, the northern part of British Columbia, actually, which they feel we still are part of as well. They're working on all different facets of connectivity. They're to Mike's point, that we got to stay focused on what's going to work in every area, and fiber optic isn't going to work in a lot of my areas. We already have determined that, so we need to keep our eyes and ears open about what is coming down the pike and what the alternatives might be, because some of these communities are just looking for something. They're not saying that they have to have 100% fiber optic connectivity or whatever, but I think the want is there and the need is there, and the NDIT is they're distributing the money for connecting communities from the province, so they're very involved with this whole effort. So I think we need to keep in touch with them and work together with them as far as opportunities that are coming forward. And to Mike's point, it's not that we're not being the provider or anything. We're just trying to be the conduit between the customer and the technology.
Maybe through to Jamie, as far as finding out, getting communities connected, have you any ideas how we might be able to do that?
Yeah, so through the chair, I think that goes back to Director Grenier's comment about that advocacy role to the industries. You know, if there's a community that's identified that you know, you as the area director has identified that maybe there's the potential there if for example, using the pipeline example, but hasn't been connected. That's the advocacy role of asking why is that not connected or what can be done about connecting that. I think like the Blue River example, that had been talked about all the way through with this project, like early on, that was going to be one of the benefits to the community. And I believe that was a commitment made early on to Blue River. And I think the local area director at the time was involved in those discussions.
Maybe, Jill, was any of your community connected from the pipeline? No, do you know? No, okay. Is there an opportunity there, do you think?
I haven't had that discussion. I could look into it.
Yeah, maybe any of the directors that are actually on the pipeline, might be able to take advantage. Director Yusof.
Yeah, Vavenby and Blackpool were, I mean, Roger talked about it, I think came to the delegation like at the beginning of our term there and talked about, yeah, potential for that, but there was no follow-up, no.
Was it a funding issue or just, nobody got in that
Not
part of
sure.
the line? Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, any other discussion around our connectivity?
Thank you, Chair Laird. Just to recap, then I just want to make sure we are clear then, because I think the direction from the committee of the whole, and Jamie can correct me if I'm wrong, was we're going to remain in that advocacy role and make sure that, so we're not funding anything, we're not chasing anything. So I think the decision or the meeting coming up in June will be the time where we can actually ask Rogers, ask Talus and connected communities to really give us the details because of all these changes and technologies that are coming. Right now, we don't make any of those decisions. So to suggest that we somehow can influence communities, it's really hard we have no control over that whatsoever. So I think we're on the same page. I just wanted to make sure that we'll stay strong on the advocacy part, and we'll kind of lean on that meeting in June to ask all the questions of the providers and see where we go from there. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on, the next item on our agenda is a grant funding writer pilot proposal. Are you looking after that one, Scott?
Thank you, Chair. The community grant writer pilot proposal is one that has been discussed a little bit off the side, and I know during the last year, it had come up a couple times just in regards to community groups looking for support with grant opportunities. We have in the past offered that to two communities. This opportunity for a grant came up, and we thought we would bring this forward for discussion to the EAs. We think it might be something of interest that you guys want to consider. We know where we are in the budget process, however, and we didn't want to put a suggestion forward that added to the taxation. So we came up with the option of possibly using a small amount of your discretionary to put towards the amount that would be required from the TNRD, and the other would be from the grant. I think at this point, I would turn it over to Austin if there's anything that Austin wanted to add in regards to the program, and then just turn it back to the directors for discussion.
So we currently have through NDIT, the grant writer that does grant writing for areas E and I. And in the past, that grant writer has been contracted out. And this is more of a grant writer who does writing for larger grants. And what we're thinking is now that we have this ETSI-BC opportunity, it would be an opportunity for these smaller groups to have someone actually work directly one-on-one with them. That we get a lot of requests from the directors saying like, hey, we have these opportunities in our area. Can we get help with that? Can this group get some assistance? And we haven't been able to provide that. So this new grant writer, this 1-year pilot project would utilize the ETSI-BC and the NDIT grant in conjunction to be able to provide assistance to all the electoral areas in the region, and would be able to work one-on-one with groups in the area to help them craft the application, to help them through the approval process and working with these funders with direct oversight, where we can provide the expertise that we already have in working with funders and in writing grants to give them the best opportunity to be successful for these grants, where now we're in a situation that it's more difficult for us to give them Canada Community Building Fund money with the additional requirements. So this is kind of like another option for us to help support these smaller groups where they can now have more success in applying for their own grant.
Again, I just have a question. Have you got a budget number for that, the cost of doing the grant writer? What would we, any idea what would the amount that each director would be participating?
So the current proposal is that each area would contribute $1,250 from the electoral area grant and aid, which matches what areas E and I are currently contributing to the NDIT program.
Has the grant been approved, or do we have to wait for approval of the grant?
It would be contingent on approval from the grant. We haven't been approved yet, but we've been in talks with both the funders about the grant, and they like the idea. So we'll see what happens.
Thank you. Any questions from the? Director Yusa? Oh, Joe.
Ladies first.
Thank you.
Ladies first. Actually, I think this is a great idea because I spent a lot of time with people in my area talking them into applying for a grant because they don't understand it. And I sit down and work with them, and most times they do, but there are other people that just won't take it on, and it could benefit them. And I also see in the grants that come through from just my end of things, if I don't get to see them ahead of time, sometimes I do see them, but staff have to send them back 2 or 3 times to the people because they're missing things. And if you look at it financially, we're wasting good staff time where we could be paying somebody to do a quicker, cleaner, faster job, and it will benefit our people. And I think our constituents would really like it if it said, we have somebody here that you can talk to about this. You don't have to go down to the coffee shop to get your instructions on how to fill out your grant.
Director Yusa?
Thank you, Chair. Got 3 questions. One is, how are the hours proposed? Like, we're all gonna contribute the same amount, 10 EAs, and I see the total hours about 1,100 odd hours. Would that be kind of equally divided, so each EA gets kind of allotted 100 hours or so?
Almost. So the NDIT program contributes just slightly more than what the ETSI-BC program would contribute. So areas E and I would get like 11% of the time, and then the rest of the areas would get like 9.5%. It's very close to being even, but we would have to track it so that we can report back to the 2 granting bodies and let them know that their money went towards their areas.
Thank you. Second question would be potential conflict of interest. If we have one grant writer for multiple societies across different EAs who might be applying for the same grant, do we have any foreseeable problems with that?
So when it comes to conflicts of interest with grants that we would be applying for and a group would be applying for, honestly, there's not a ton of overlap in that respect. The list of grants that these societies can apply for that we can't is very vast, and there's a lot on the table that's not being utilized. With respect to 2 different societies applying for the same grant, it would be the grant writer would provide objective support for the group and help them as much as they could, and whoever was awarded the grant would be awarded the grant. We wouldn't impact the funder or anything. We would just give the society as much good advice and assistance as we can.
Thank you. And lastly, have we weighed the option of instead of grant writer, an economic development officer? Because ETSI-BC also supports economic development officer employments for local governments. As I understand it, economic development officers also writes grants as part of their job description. Would that kind of expand the flexibility more if we looked at that instead of a just pure grant writer? Thank you.
With the recent changes to the CCBF program and the feedback that we've been getting from the board, we thought that at this time it made the most sense to target specifically the grant side of things. We haven't looked at that too much. Jamie can speak a little bit more to that.
Yeah, thanks. Just to add to that, this goes back to our discussion that we had at this board a year ago around economic development and whether or not we actually engage in economic development. And in most areas, we don't do any economic development. So my comment on that would be if in a certain area that they wanted to pursue further economic development, that would be funded out of an economic development function for that EA service area, because the challenge, and I've looked into this quite a bit over the history of the TNRD, we've struggled with economic development because of how big and diverse the region is. So I would not recommend calling a single part-time person an economic development officer for the TNRD, because there's no way they could meet any expectations of what does that mean, where to even start. So I support focusing. This is to support grant writing for the community groups that are out there.
Just to follow up on that, Jamie, I know we did have an economic development line in our budget at one time. Because of the diversity of our area, it's really difficult, even when you have funding for just your area. It's very difficult to actually get something happening. And we decided as a EA directors 2 years ago, I think it was, to remove that line item from our budget. And I quite agree with what you're saying. It's economic development is quite a different animal compared to grant writing. You have to have a special person that can actually understand and put economic development items together, and it's really difficult to do. Scott, you had a comment?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add to that same conversation. I would agree with Jamie's comments and yours. I feel that the board would need to give direction that we want to go at and do economic development as a region. And the fact that this is only a very casual pilot program, I would also agree with Jamie's comment that this wouldn't look right. I think our biggest priority right now is what we're hearing from the communities is that we have all these societies that want to do more for their communities. We don't have the staffing. We felt like this would be an economical way to leverage grants, a small amount of discretionary, and test this for a year. I've talked to a number of EA directors already about this, and there is some complexities around what if half of you, what if one of you have 50 societies that come and the other ones don't have any? Like, we need to really have a terms of reference to make sure that we're balancing this, and we kind of learn from it in the first year, and hopefully it expands and continues to go, but we'll make sure that the EA committees are in the loop and understand how this is working, because we want to be fair if everyone's contributing.
Thank you. Any other, Director Grenier?
Thank you, Chair. I note that this is a pilot project, and I also note that 73% of the funds are being granted. So our cost is roughly $1,200 an EA. So I can get behind that. But I would hope that after the year, we have an assessment so that we're not dealing with creep on overhead costs. If this is a success, we want to keep it going. If it's less of a success, then we don't want it to grow into another thing. So if there could be some kind of evaluation at the end of the 1-year term, and I could certainly support it if we got these grants of 73% coming along with it. It seems like money well spent.
Part of our requirements for the role would be very, very detailed tracking on what was applied for, how much was applied for, which group it was applied through, and if it was successful, how much it was successful for, to give us those metrics at the end to see how much ultimately this resulted in to each community.
Scott, you had a comment?
If I could just add to, it would also be grant dependent. So this is for this coming year, 2025, and it would have to come back to the board or to the EA committee for a further grant. So it does have an end date, I guess, and an evaluation period.
Director Carla?
Thank you. The other piece of this, which Mr. Hildebrand alluded to was the terms of reference, because we know that right now, we're not sure how many of your community groups, and some of you have more than others, would come forward. So at first, it would be trying to keep a balance of making sure if you're all contributing equally, how do we make sure that that's fairly distributed? And there could be an imbalance that we're not aware of, right? Because one area might have 5 groups come forward and only another area 1 or 2. But everybody has to kind of move forward with this in an equal fashion to start out with. And then we can reassess and bring that back as a conversation once we have more information on that.
Thank you. Director Thorpe? Sorry about that, but
That's okay. Thank you, Chair. Actually, one of my 3 questions got answered. So one is a clarification, the other is a question. Right now, Area I and Area E, the money from NDIT goes to Gold Country for our grant, for the grant writing. So I'm assuming that this coming year, that would not happen. We would keep it in-house, so to speak. I just want to make sure that that's clarified. And then the second is a question. That with the EAs contributing to this grant writing program, and I think it's a great idea. I just want to make sure that the focus will be on EA communities, those unincorporated communities, rather than the municipalities that already have their own grant writers and have access to more resources than these unincorporated little community groups. I just want to make sure that that would somehow be in the terms of reference.
So yes, the answer to your first question is yes, we would like a grant writer to work with Austin and Ainsley. That would be, I think, a benefit for us. And the second part, did you want?
Yeah.
Okay.
Unless you have a comment.
No, I think I'm fine.
So this is something Director, through you, Chair, this is something Director Thorpe and I had a discussion about, and there's a lot of societies that may be based in a municipality that benefit the entire region. There may be societies and municipalities that only benefit the municipality. So that would be part of the vetting process as well. And I think there would be some communication with the EA directors too, to make sure that they're aware and understand which ones are being what applications come in and getting their feedback on. But ultimately, I think it would be best for the entire region. The 73% of the grant is actually coming to the TNRD as a grant, but our focus would be on the EA directors, given your contribution.
thank you. Any other discussion? No.
I just want to say and take up a small amount of time to say, I think this is one of the best initiatives that we have brought forward to our small communities as EA directors. And I know going back to a community association meeting or an improvement district meeting, they are going to be thrilled that the TNRD is actually going to be working with these groups and trying to make life better for our residents. So I'm really proud and I'm super happy that you guys have taken on this initiative as staff and brought it to us. So thank you.
I just want to say a big thank you to Ainsley. She came to me and talked to me about the ETSI grant opportunity, and it was really came from her. So big thank you to her for this one.
Want me to pat you on the back now?
Not me.
Okay.
Ainsley.
Okay, and any other discussion around the grant writer? Oh,
Thanks. Just from the perspective of municipality, Ashcroft, Cache Creek, and Clinton have all taken advantage of the NDIT grant writing opportunity, grant writer opportunity. It is really helpful for local groups. We don't differentiate in Ashcroft. We look at, does the society that's applying for assistance benefit people of Ashcroft in some way? If they do, great. That's our criteria. It's not like what's your mailing address. Something that has been touched on, and I just want to mention this too, there are a lot of grants available to local community organizations, nonprofits, charities. They have no idea they're out there. And so it's great that they can get the assistance. And we've heard this from groups that have been assisted by the grant writer. They love the fact that they can get the assistance in wading through writing those essays that you sometimes have to write in answer to questions, using buzzwords like rural, remote, disadvantage. Those are big, big buzzwords that we're told to include in all our, Austin's smiling there. But something else that the grant writer is able to do is identify grants that the groups don't know about. You know, they come, so they can come to the grant writer and say, we want to do X. And the grant writer can say, okay, well, here are some grant programs that will be able to help you with X. Instead of community groups, which is volunteers who don't have the time and the expertise, trying to wade through the guidelines going, I don't know, do we qualify for this? Who knows? I'll forget it. So that is a really, really positive thing that we have found in our communities. We've done it now for several years because it is successful and it does help. And Austin's right. There's a lot of money out there and a lot of it. I mean, all of the things that we as a local government apply to are vastly oversubscribed. That's not always the case with some of these grants that are available to community organizations. They're like, please help us give away our money. So that is a really, really big help for community groups that are looking for big amounts, small amounts, and then just telling them about things like leveraging. You know, a lot of NDIT grants, for example, are 80-20, 70-30. So if you can, you know, oh, there's no way we can raise $100,000 for whatever it is. Okay, well, can you raise 20,000? Because then you can leverage that for a matching grant. So it's little things like that. It's not necessarily saying, hey, we're going to guarantee you're going to get $10,000, but it's helping them. So that's just a perspective of the communities that I know of that have had it. We keep going back and doing it because it's a really good program.
Thank you. Any other questions around the grant writer? So I need the somebody want to make the recommendation? That would be great.
Oh.
I guess it's Trish and Jill. Okay, the next item on our agenda is a roundtable discussion. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, call a question. All in favor? Yes.
Director Houghton is also online.
Oh, yes. Director Hunt, I'm glad to see that you've joined us by Zoom. Did you have any questions?
No, good to be here, guys, and I vote in favor of it. Thank you. Live from Royal Inland.
Okay. Any other questions? We'll move on to roundtable discussion. I have a question around, I've had a couple of emails when I got back home and they were concerning a logging road that went up to Glimpse Lake, which is a resort area that's quite isolated. The forestry has deactivated one of their only routes out of the community, other than they have one road going in, but they did have a road, an alternate road going out at Glimpse Lake. I don't know, Kevin, I see you shaking your head. Have you had any information on that one?
Yeah, through the chair. I'm certainly aware of the road. I believe it goes to the north and connects up to Peter Hope Lake eventually. But no, I hadn't heard that it was being deactivated. So no, that's good information for us to have. And that's an issue we've been looking at other areas of the TNRD in terms of, FSRs being deactivated when they're also serving as sometimes fairly critical evacuation routes.
I'll forward those emails to you and you can see them. With that, I think it's we're all concerned about obviously accessing, and when you see things like that happening to a road that's been there for a long time, it's a little concerning. I also have one more area that I'll talk to you about where they're concerned about having access with only one road in and possible logging road out. So, thank you. Director Grenier.
Thank you, Chair. I have an issue in our area. That's what we're talking about right now. I have an issue in our area that was raised with staff. We've talked about it, but I would like an update if possible. In Savannah, we had that flash flood. We were able to get funding for the flash flood. Residents in Savannah have said, hey, look at all of the culverts that end in nowhere except our front yard kind of deal. And so staff also went out and met with residents. I had done the same thing, walked the culverts, and have communicated with people like Moti and CPR. I'm wondering if we could get an update from staff on that issue.
So, yeah, we, through to Director Grenier, at the, believe it probably would have been about a month and a half ago, myself and staff from Ministry of Transportation met with the residents down there and walked through the areas. The residents ask had been around, to your exact point, kind of what is MOTT's role with these culverts that are, servicing their infrastructure, but are then moving the water onto private property. There was a response from MOTT to the residents basically saying that they weren't going to be doing anything about it, to summarize it. And that's kind of the last we've heard on the matter for now. I believe a number of those residents are out of the country at the moment. Some of the ones who were kind of taking the lead on that when they come to speak to the board and send some correspondence. So no, nothing new on that. And then obviously, from the TNRD perspective, we have fairly limited tools to assist other than from an advocacy perspective.
Supplementary to that, then, would it be your recommendation that I guess I, as a director, advocate to the province to have somebody look at this? Because essentially what the residents are pointing out is that the flash flood that occurred last year could easily happen again because the culverts are still pointing at the private property. So is that what you're suggesting, given the results and the response from Modi?
Yes, I'll jump in on that one, Director Grenier. That's certainly an option. I'll just provide a little more context for the benefit of the whole board here. From Modi's perspective, their role is to maintain their infrastructure and get water from one side of their road to the other. So, and that's going back to the discussion with the community. That's where there's, I think, going to be an ongoing disagreement of opinions. I appreciate the opinions and totally respect the opinions of the homeowners, where their issue is that the water is being funneled and collected and then dumped onto their backyard. And from Modi's perspective, they're saying our responsibility is to get the water from one side of the road to the other. And we've fixed and repaired all those existing culverts. And so they're now fixed and repaired. So they have no plans to change or re-engineer the drainage. So back to your original question, yes, I think to solve the concerns of the residents, it would require significant re-engineering and a drainage plan that would require upgrades to Modi infrastructure, which the Modi operational staff don't have the ability to make that decision. They have the responsibility to maintain and clean out the existing culverts. So for the benefit of the committee, there was a follow-up letter, which I think you're aware of, from the community to Modi, asking them again to to address these issues. So certainly it could be an advocacy role. There's no further action or tools that we have of staff to escalate it, other than, as Kevin mentioned, that the response piece, if and when there's flooding, we get involved. But unfortunately, the reality is, there's a risk of that happening again if there's that kind of flash rainfall event.
And I'll just further to that, at that meeting, there was a few other issues the residents raised with MOTT that they are going to be actioning. So not in terms of the actual drainage, but there was some concerns brought up around the slope around a culvert up towards the tracks that was on the MOTT right of way, and with the kind of debris collection apparatus they had installed on the property where the culvert is under Buey Street as well. So MOTT's working on those issues. In some cases, they might be waiting for the ground to loosen up a bit once we're further into the spring. But in terms of the actual, attempts to redirect some of the drainage,
Director Morrison, then Director Thorpe.
Thank you.
This will feel like yet another rendition of EAWO's Crown Land, Natural Resource Officers and everything else. But it truly seems like a broken record. And I happen to be stuck with one issue, which is the epitome of the problem that is sort of resounding around parts of the entire TNRD, I suspect. And it is about the advocacy piece. And I know that our advocacy team are working really hard on this, but we still don't seem to be getting anywhere. So my little microcosm of an example, God bless the Pritchard Beach North. But there it is. And I guess I think we're all going to run into some of these and feeling like yes, we've gone to UBCM and we need to continue to do that, I think, as well as electoral areas. I think that is important. We need to present our case. And one more time, somebody from Crown Lands is going to say, that's all we've got. Oh, get them to phone wrap. It clearly seems like we're chasing the tail. So I think I'd like to just leave this on our topics for discussion and how are we going to move this forward on the succeeding in our advocacy in terms of the attention from the Crown Land officers, the NLRs. There's all levels involved in these. So I don't have a solution. As I said, I feel like a broken record, but I think if we can just keep this in the forefront, assuming there's an opportunity to be at UBCM and state our own case as well, I think that is an important thing. And anyone who has got through the walls on this particular issue, I would just welcome some private conversations as well to see what are other avenues that we can deal with, because it's a difficult challenge.
Director Thorpe and then Director Houghton.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, Lee's speak kind of leads into mine. Given recent visits by ministers to the area and the fact that TNRD area directors were unaware of these visits, I'd like to push and see what your thoughts are on having the letter that we sent out in December of 23 revamped and sent out to the ministries again. We have a new government. It's not up to the municipalities to push for inclusion for the EA directors. It's, I think, up to us to educate and advocate with the ministries for inclusion. So I would like to see what everybody's thought is on sending out a new letter, focusing on the EAs and the contact. It's sort of a shorter follow-up letter that specifically focuses on the EAs, because I believe the ministries know who all the contacts are in the municipalities, but we need to kind of advocate for our areas and our electoral directors so that ministries are aware if they're in Clearwater, that perhaps they include Lee and Yusuf and Jill, or if they're down in my area meeting with Lytton, that they include myself, or over in Merritt, that they include David and Herb, depending on what it is. So that's my advocacy piece and my ask that maybe we bring this to the board again.
Yeah. Do we need a recommendation to update the letter and send to the appropriate ministries? Is that your recommendation, Director Thorpe?
Yeah, I'd like to suggest that we bring this to the board. So I will make a recommendation that we send a new letter, that we ask the board that we send a new letter to the ministries, and that it focus more clearly on the EAs and perhaps be slightly shorter, because we all know that after the first paragraph, sometimes people's eyes glaze over.
Yeah.
Don't put that part in the motion.
Okay. Okay, is there a seconder for that motion? Seconder. Just before I call the questions, Scott, is this something that we can actually accomplish and send a new letter? after board approval.
Yeah, I guess if the board approves, we can certainly do that. And I think the board is going to want to chime in on this for sure. So, and I think this was something that was potentially going to be brought up by Chair Roden this afternoon, given the advocacy tour we had and discussions around that. So this could be also a discussion that may already be happening this afternoon to get the formal, I guess, because if this motion is made now, it won't go onto the agenda this afternoon. So it might make most sense to have that discussion this afternoon and then get a decision, or else we'd have to wait until the next meeting. Am I right on that, corporate officer?
Maybe through to Director Thorpe, is it important enough that we need to have it on tomorrow's agenda?
I
Or
could
this
go either
afternoon's
way,
agenda?
is whatever the majority of this group would like, I'm happy with.
So I'll call the question on the motion and see if we have 100% support. Question on all in favor of the motion? Anybody opposed? Yeah, so it looks like the directors would like to, whether we get it on this afternoon's meeting or if that's come up at a later meeting, I don't know if there's that much urgency to.
I'll let Mr. Jeremiah speak to that. My point was this motion now will go to the next board meeting. The agenda is already set tomorrow, and instead we could bring it up through the chair during the advocacy tour presentation and board report and perhaps get an answer right then and there is what I'm suggesting. Yeah.
You can
Am
mark
I right?
it down as a yes too.
And through to our chair, is that something that works for you for this afternoon?
Thank you. Yes, I was planning on bringing this up in conjunction with my comments about the advocacy tour that we took earlier this month. And my suggestion was going to be, Ms. Jeremiah has kindly refreshed CAO Hildebrand's memory and mine about the letter by finding it for us. And I was going to suggest this afternoon that if the board passed a recommendation to that effect, that we would go over the letter again, make sure that it was updated and resend it to all the ministries, particularly in light of the fact that after the election in October last year, we do have a lot of not necessarily new ministers, but people new to their portfolios. And it never hurts to remind people. So yes, I'm happy to do that this afternoon so that then that can go off. The letter can probably go off before our next board meeting.
Thank you. Director Thorpe.
Respectfully, I would ask that we really focus on the EAs with this updated letter, if that would be okay.
It would, yes, the letter, it's going to be a revamp of the letter from 2023, which reminded ministers and government staff that electoral area directors needed consideration, that when they are touring areas, when they are coming into the regions, into what in Victoria they doubtless consider the hinterlands, that they should make every effort to reach out to electoral area directors along with First Nations and municipal. The letter does not say that, and I'm not suggesting the letter say this, recognizing that there are times when a minister is coming to a municipality purely to speak about municipal matters. But when they are doing something like, for example, Minister Parmar was doing recently, where he was touring the Okanagan and various areas and doing sort of public events, yes, absolutely, ministers should be reaching out to all the elected officials in that area, including the electoral areas, directors whose electoral areas they are spending a good deal of time in.
That's kind of what I mean. Like this past letter, it was 4 pages long and it listed every director and every alternate director. What I'm suggesting respectfully is that they already know who the municipal directors are. So we could maybe just focus on the EAs in the follow-up letter?
Yes, the follow-up letter, my idea for it was that it was going to focus specifically on reminding ministers, they should not need reminding, but reminding them anyway, that it is courtesy and it is respectful to reach out to electoral area directors when you are passing through electoral areas, that they need to be extended the same courtesy that all other elected officials are. It's frustrating to me in some ways to see it's not frustrating to see the acknowledgement of First Nations as a level of government equal to other levels of government. It is frustrating to me when I see examples of the province not following that with electoral area directors.
Thank you.
Director Hooton, you have a question? I see your hands up.
Still got to get my name right there, David.
Oh, thanks for reminding me, Doug.
Anyhow,
Sorry about that.
I'll keep this short because I know you got other things to do, but I really want to thank yesterday on the voting on the groundwater. And I know it only relates to a few EAs, but I know the folks in Deloro will be happy that we're at least taking the lead on trying to give them some quality water and hopefully quantity water. So I'll leave that one at that. The other one is all these wind power projects are coming at us left, right, and center. And I know we've had informational letters at a couple of the meetings saying that they're working on the project. But I would really like to see us write a letter to Minister Dix and say that before approval of these things, long before, I would like to see more consultation with the residents in the area that these are going through. Yes, some of these are going through the hinterland where there's nobody around out in the middle of nowhere. But the one in my area is going right through Monty Lake, right through Westwold, and right through down into Falkland. And then another one coming over the top from Chase, going from Pillar Lake over. And there was little or no consultation. When we had that informational letter saying that, yeah, they were going to work on it. And then before you know it, slam dunk, these things were announced. Dix was on the TV announcing 8 wind power projects, and now all the residents are in turmoil because they had little or no consultation. I think it would only be courtesy, just like Director Thorpe's letter. If you're going to get to this stage in a project, you should consult folks like us, EA directors, and the residents in an area where there are people involved in close proximity, and that's really been a bone up my, you know what, and they've done nothing, and Adrian Dix has walked around it, and I know in advocacy, I think that should be one of our advocacy topics, and I'd like a letter written to Minister Dix stating that. The other thing, the other part is I just want to give you a quick update, and it's on a positive note, is after the Rossmore fire, Arrow Environmental has been up, starting down towards Stump Lake Way, grinding all the slash piles. And I talked to Greg Kilba from Arrow, in fact, from the hospital bed, and they're at a stalemate right now because of road restrictions, but they are presently, and Kevin Shrepnick and Jamie will know where they're at. They're just above the Long Lake School on Long Lake Road in Knutsford, so they're coming our way. They got to there before breakup, and to date they have hauled, let me get this figures right, 350,000 cubic meters of material to the Kruger pulp mill that normally would be burnt, and that's equivalent of 750 Arrow truckloads that have gone to town and used for electricity. And they have a lot more to go till they get to our area. So I would like to see at one of our meetings, EAs or community as a whole, because Greg gave a really informative, basically a background of the project and the project to date in Knutsford on how it all came to be, including all the different regulations and that are in there, and at our Kamloops Stock Association meeting, and I heard it was very well received. And I would like to see us invite Greg from Arrow, and that would include Tom Hoffman from Kruger, maybe at one of our meetings at a later date, just to explain to us, because I think every EA director that is in close proximity of a that you know, to a pulp mill like Kamloops, that it would really benefit you in, you know, it doesn't have to be a fire. It can be just regular every day-to-day logging. And that's about all I got to say. I'm glad to be back here, even though it's from Zoom. It's been a rough road, been a rough month, and I probably got another month to go. And hopefully I can walk again and come and sit in that chair over there and harass Bill Sarai and Usopp. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Doug. And does staff need any recommendation from that? Go ahead, Marty.
Thank you, Chair Laird. Through to Director Houghton, it might be best to bring this up at the board meeting this afternoon so that we could have the entire board agree to send this letter. Otherwise, we could have you send a letter as your capacity as the EA director. However, we might have more more weight behind it if it is from the entire board.
Okay, I'll do that, Marnie. So under new business today, or,
Yes, that would be great. Thank you.
okay, thank you.
Director Yusa?
Thank you. I got 4 points wanted to share and discuss. One referring back to the discussion around the letter to the minister, various provincial government about EA directors. I would hope maybe Chair Roden, Board Chair Roden, in the message to carry more of the fact that it's not, I believe it's, and I believe for us, it's not an ego thing. We're not trying to say, oh, you must meet with me because you've disrespected, me personally. You know what? I don't really care to have a minister come see me. It is the message should be that they are respecting the communities, the voters, the British Columbians that they represent as ministers. I hope in a way, Chair Roden, you're a better wordsmith than me. That's, kind of the tone I want to set across. And also let them see that it's a benefit to them. It's a benefit to them, as politicians to engage with voters. So I hope they could see that as a plus. Second point, in light of lessons learned myself recently, I will also say, Director Houghton, feel free to contact Director Thorpe, who has access to Minister Dix's personal phone number, who we met with at a advocacy event recently in Vancouver. And then relating to that, another thing I wanted to share at the roundtable, as we, participate in a lot of advocacy political events, we start to network not only with politician to politician, but there is a lot of industries, lobbyists at these events. And I've noticed that recently, one case in point I'm trying to follow up on is economic development opportunities from these networking. I've confirmed with staff that unfortunately, we unlike municipalities, EAs don't have a lot of, authority over incentives such as taxes and such. I've always told Mike Getz I very much admire his style and his ability to bring in, jobs for his residents. So related to the upcoming, the current ongoing discussion around EA reforms, I would suggest the stakeholders involved in those evaluations to perhaps evaluate legislating us more power, like more economic development tools for our toolboxes. I hope that, if our SILGA representative and board chair can carry that message onwards. And sorry. Yeah, and sorry, I can't count. I have 5 points. And then a thank you note to staff. A gentleman from sorry, Jill, I know it's your area. I'm just a gentleman who I met in Clearwater who lived in Barrier, who reached out and updated me, a process he undertook 2 years ago to build more trails in Barrier. And he complimented, Kevin and Jamie and Joe and Kevin, you've been up there and very receptive to the idea. That's always that's all I think we want to hear is from residents saying that TNRD staff, reacts timely and positively. So thank you. And lastly, just sharing what I don't know, I think that we benefit from an equal understanding of the timeline about fire smarting grants. Compliments to staff about the timeliness of the assessments. A resident in Area A reached us, said, hey, I've got fire smarting work I want to get done, but I want to take advantage of the grants. So they were they complimented to me saying that, hey, yeah, no, staff was great. She called on a Monday and got an assessment arranged for Tuesday. But just so I don't know if the rest of our EA directors are aware, the timetable for actual eligibility for the homeowners to get grant money is within this year. But that's all my points. Thank you.
Director Grenier?
Thank you, Chair. 2 points that I'd hope to raise in the roundtable. The first is that we, as EA directors, recently attended that function in Richmond. And in that function in Richmond, we talked about well, we did a SWOT analysis of our area, and then leading from that, we talked about things that might make our area better, the opportunities to make our area better. And the issue that came out of that was the review of services, the review of EA services on some sort of a timely basis. And that then resulted in phone calls. I spoke to CAO Hildebrand. He had received a phone call from another CAO asking about how we were handling that review of services. And the answer was, well, currently we're not. And then I received a phone call after that conversation, CAO Hildebrand, from a director that said, well, let's talk about this a little bit more. This is something that we think that we should be doing in our area, he said. And I said that I would be raising that at our board level or at our EA level committee meeting. We have so many of these services, I understand, but as we've seen in some of the services, they didn't have expiry, they didn't have a sort of a review date. We've been dealing with those on a one-off basis, but given that we're now moving into a 5-year plan, would it make sense, at least for the term of our representation, that we would get through all or the majority of services just to say, yeah, this service still is necessary, or it needs to be ramped up, or it needs to be discontinued? Is there some sort of process along with the financial process that we're following that that would make that an exercise worthwhile?
CO Fox.
Thank you, Chair, through to the board. The topic of service level reviews is an interesting one. A little less challenging, I'd say, for a municipality. So at a high level, we do a service level review every year as staff. So we look at really what that is you have a number of different services. I always refer to it as a menu of services. Let's say, for an example, and I think typically what happens is new services get talked about, like the regional parks, different things like that. And we investigate that at the time, but there's not a lot of time spent where we are taking one service and prying into that and opening it up. We have many services: community parks, community halls, EOC, fire department services. I mean, it's close to 120 different services that are there. The service level really is, what does it take to deliver that service? And is it offering the service that you want it to? So if there is, and I think what triggers me to say how deep you're going to go into that is when you start talking about budgets and not being content with having taxation increases every year. As long as you never ask for the service to change, we're telling you this is the cost that a service takes to deliver. And if there's inflation or cost changes, that's going to change. So costs are going to go up typically a little bit every year. If you don't like that, then you have to go into your services and decide, are they the services that I want to offer? Are there services out there that you think that are not meeting the level of service, or you could be okay with a lower level of service? And the reason why I kind of go down this tangent is I don't think you can just blanket it to say we want to look at every service that we have and do a service level review. What I would say is look at your menu of services and say, what are the ones that I could do without? What are the ones that I would be okay with changing? And then let's look at those and do a service level review on the ones you're targeting first as a priority. So if there was a service, and I would say economic development, we pretty much did a service level review of economic development in the conversation that we had, that we brought, and we said, this is what you're getting, this is what you're paying for. Is that what you want? So it's a bit of a catchphrase in the industry, the service level review, and a lot of people don't really understand. We do that on a high level all the time. So to take that long, elaborated piece of what I just said and kind of pare it down, you have a number of services. We go through them with you every year. If there are services on there that you are not satisfied with, I would say suggest doing a review on that. How many people does it take to deliver that service? What is the equipment it takes to deliver that service? You know, it gets into that level of information, much more detailed level, so that you can explore that. But that's not something where we can say we're going to take 120 services, you know, maybe in 5 years get through that. It's a bit of work to go through. So my suggestion would be to try and pick those, I'm going to say low hanging fruits, if there's ones that are jumping out to you. I would say typically when Jamie and I are meeting with you guys going through each of your services, I haven't heard yet of a suggestion to reduce or cut any. So I don't target those, but if that is something that you're looking at, we would definitely need to do a service level review.
Supplementary, thank you for that. I'm trying to come up with a process that doesn't require a comprehensive service level review of every service. I don't think that that's necessary. I think that we're looking for, I'm suggesting a procedure where over the course of our 4-year term, the services that we provide at the TNRD, if there was a sheet that says, has a service level review been considered or something along the line, I can tell you in my area, first thing I got hit with right after I got elected was the Gold Country Tourism. You sit on the board of directors of the Gold Country Tourism, and I'm contributing roughly $29,000 to it. Well, we went through a service level review of that. I have a continuing issue where there's something called Mammoth Lake TV that the previous director who was there for 3 terms doesn't know what that is. It's still showing up as a line item. It's just a bit of an irritant because nobody that I know is benefiting from Mammoth Lake TV in Area J. And I have talked about it with fellow director Laird and with Mayor Smith. So all I'm suggesting is that if we know we have, say, 120 or 140 services, that maybe just a running schedule that says we did a service review of this in 2022, or we did it in 2024, or we did it in 2026. And it's just a checkbox that says the last time a service review by the EA director or by the staff or anything that was on this was such and such, that then would prompt that director or the board to then say, oh, I think we ought to look at that a little more, or no, you know, we're already day in, day out on garbage. So it's just a process that I thought would be useful.
Just have a comment. I think it's up to the EA directors to look at we all have specified area services for different services that are provided that only your area pays for. And I can't remember how many there are actually in area M. There's a few in there that are directed specifically for a specified area. That is something that you could do as a EA directors, is look at your budget and make sure that the extra service you're providing just for your community is something that's still necessary. As you were saying, the TV is one, and maybe we need to have a little bit more in-depth discussion. I know for that particular, I think is $6,000 a year. And I talked to Director Smith about that, and she said when they were having the discussion around removing that service to the community, that was the only time their board room was overflowing with people. And it's such a minimal amount of money, but it seemed to be a fairly hot point with their community. They supported keeping that service, and it's up to the EA directors. If you don't want to supply that service anymore, you can ask it that it not be provided in your area. So and there's probably other areas where you could look, each director could have a look and see if there's anything that they would like to do. And when you go down and meet with CFO Fox, those are the ones that you bring up and say, we need a review on those areas. We do have, I think there's 6 core services that are actually paid for by all of the regional district. I don't know if we need to look at those or not, but we could just let maybe through to Scott, what's your thoughts on service reviews and do we need to proceed?
Thank you, Chair Laird. I think I would agree with what Carla said too, is we do it kind of every year in some way or shape or form. If EAs specifically want to go into some of their specified services, we'd be glad to do that on an annual basis. It seems like our focus, and to be honest, I think our focus has been adding. We've been adding EAs to mosquitoes. We've been adding barking dogs to like that. That's the ask we're getting. We're being asked to do more and provide more services. So which do we do? Like, do we like, that's the problem is we can only do so much. And I feel like if we want to start focusing on some of the efficiencies, we'd be glad on those, but just not sure where to start when we have 140 or 120 some odd services. So I guess we need some direct feedback from the EAs on what they want us to change because it's not staff's, I guess, purview to suggest that. It would be up to the elected officials. Jamie, do you have a comment?
Yeah, comment?
Yeah, just to add, and I think this is a good discussion because I know there is some like grant and aid services that just exist and that haven't been reconsidered in some time. But just for some context, I think whether or not we do a service review and the complexity of that will change for each of the services. So since the Logan Lake, Mammoth Lake TV service got brought up as an example, it's not a single area that's contributing to the service. There's different funding mechanisms. So what happens in one area is a domino effect to the other. And so as Director Laird's familiar with, there's a similar scenario going on where we're doing a service review for area M&N fire protection. So again, that came through a recommendation or a notice of motion to the board or a letter from Director Laird that the board endorsed, and that now we're going through this very extensive process that involved reports, number of meetings, and now we're having a community meeting to go through it. And that's just one single service review. So it can be done, but the workload can be significant for a lot of those because you need to consider the domino effect. I think if we're doing a proper appropriate service review, I think that public consultation needs to be part of that. Who's determining whether the public wants that service or not? I would suggest that it should be a public be involved in that. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. So going back to the original discussion, I think it's appropriate for service reviews to be conducted where there's questions or concerns from the board about that service. But I think it needs to be a direction from the board of how to prioritize that. Because from a staffing perspective, creating new services and ending services is a huge amount of work, and that there's only limited capacity to do that. So as Scott said, we're currently going through we have 3 or 4 different service establishment process requests that are on the books for this year, plus a service review we're currently doing to remove or shrink a service in area M&N. So I would say we're already tapped out for this year, could start making a list for next year.
Just a clarification on the service review that we're doing in area M&N for fire protection. It was actually a petition that I received from a very small community of 38 residents. And that is what triggered the service review. And it's just, we're looking at that one small area. They're very unhappy with the cost of the service that's being provided. And that's what we're trying to work our way through right now. And that's just one item. And we wouldn't even be discussing this as a service review if the people in that particular small community hadn't put a petition together that included, I think, 80% of the residents in that area. So if you're triggering a service review, like I say, I wouldn't even be going there right now if I hadn't been asked by that small group to have a look at the service and make sure it's a service that they're getting proper service from. And we're in the process of doing that. It's been a very long process, and we are involving the public again for the second time as far as whether or not that service is continued or discontinued. So when you do service reviews, they are very intensive, and you really don't want to go down that path because it can get quite, unless it's a real obvious issue, then I just recommend you have a look and make sure it's something that needs to be done.
Hi there. I just want to, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to reiterate your point. I think that's exactly what I wanted to say would be that service review we're doing in Harmon Estates has taken us hundreds of hours to go through in public consultation. And now to go do service reviews on whatever ones we choose, we're going to have to follow a very similar process where we need to consult. We need to have multiple municipalities and EAs, and it takes a ton of time. So I guess that's my point is how do we prioritize? So just wanted to reiterate that.
Like I say, the one that triggered this one was a petition that came from the residents in Harmon Estates. Otherwise, we wouldn't be discussing fire services in our area at all. Director Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of quick points. When we're talking about reviews, is there any effort put by the department heads to contact other RDs to discuss best practices? What works in the CRD may work better here or may not work better here, or from a supply, equipment and all the rest of it. I mean, I'm not saying that the TNRD is behind the 8 ball, and I'm sure the best way of doing everything, but not necessarily. So, just saying, that it might not be a bad idea to compare if that information is available. I don't know whether RDs share that sort of information together or not, but second point is I just want to talk about the advocacy a little bit. I know there's been some conversation about the trip that Scott and the group made down to Victoria. I support that wholeheartedly. I don't support it in the fact that there would be less participation at UBCM by directors and all the rest of the staff. But I've got a couple of personal situations that Scott and the group have helped me out with. And I certainly appreciate the effort that was made down there. And I think it's a lot more forceful when there's a couple of 3 of the top people down there advocating on our behalf. And so I just want to say that I support that wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to respond to Director Smith. First one on best practices. It's amazing the amount of conversations and communications that happen between staff at regional districts and municipalities, not only in the TNRD, but throughout the whole province. I probably get a dozen emails from CAOs from the other 26 regional districts on a weekly basis on what do you do about this? What do you think about this? We share best practices all the time. I know Carla, from a financial standpoint, and all the CFOs have a very similar group on best practices and what they do. I know most of our staff, Jamie in operations, we talk to all sorts of people to make sure that we're kind of making sure that we're at the top level and learning from others as well. So we certainly do that. So thank you for the comment. And then the other one was just on advocacy, and I appreciate that. I know the board made a decision to add a bit of money to the budget to go over and above because UBCM is important. And I think we recognize that. And now that there's extra money to go and do these once or twice a year trips to really focus in on what the board's advocacy plans and requests are, I think is going to make a big difference. And you'll hear the report this afternoon from Chair Roden, but I think we left a mark on Victoria that day and people knew who the TNRD was. So we'll share that this afternoon with the board.
Thank you, Chair. Third issue that I would like to raise in the roundtable. Director Houghton and Director Morris and myself received an email last week from a former director, and the gist of the email was that the TNRD receives grant funds, and that the grant funds generally get applied to specific area services. In this particular case, he was referring to utilities. And his point in his email to the directors, which I then shared with Director Laird and with CAO Hildebrand, was that for people that live in the EA that don't benefit from that service, say a water utility, they're always being, in his mind, shortchanged. Our taxes go up to pay for all the things that are commons, like garbage, but all the grant money is going to a utility. That's his position. I pointed out that we're just dealing with B-Trains, and which is a garbage facility that will benefit everybody in the EA. But the point that he was raising was that there seems to be a preponderance of projects that the grant money gets directed to. When I copied CAO Hildebrand, he said, well, staff would have a comment about this. And so I'm just simply, as an EA director, on behalf of my fellow directors, raising that as a point for consideration, and I'd love to hear a comment about that.
Through the chair to Director Grenier. We've been in contact with that previous director a number of times and have spent dozens and dozens of hours interacting and sharing our perspective and some of the strategies that's happened. I believe this was first brought up in 2013, and we were just looking here now anticipating this question where there was involvement with the ombudsperson, there was involvement with the provincial government, there was all sorts of things. And in the day, the board made a decision on the direction they wanted to go. And I know Ms. Fox and Mr. Vieira and myself have talked about this, and grants, I believe, need to be used in our regional district for our core infrastructure first as a priority. And we do that. And there's lots of examples where we use them on regional services. But there's also a significant need in our water utility services that we all are very aware of. Otherwise, costs for the users are going to skyrocket. So I guess it's a funny balance on how we manage that. But we feel like we try to do our best to provide the best service, use grants appropriately, try to reduce taxation. I guess if further investigations needed into what he is asking for, the board would have to direct that in some way, because it would take a lot of time and effort to pull back over a decade of history of this to explain it all to the board. So I don't really have a great answer other than when we talk about utility services, we are very much aware that the user pay idea of how users pay for those services within that area. But there's so many other components to it when it comes to HR needs or IT needs or legal that require the larger organization to help in some way or form. Even the grant, if we wanted to put a grant toward a utility, the amount of effort and time that staff take from outside of that service area has got to be considered. So it's, I don't know if Ms. Fox has any questions or comments, or Mr. Vieira. It's something that we spend a lot of time communicating on when we kind of already know the answer. We already feel like we're on that path and we've got a strategy in place.
Just supplemental. Oh, sorry. Just supplemental to that then. So our position is staff's position, and so far the board's position, is that we're applying grants where we think that they should be applied. There's nothing in our process or procedures that is out of line. He had suggested that there was some door being closed or some commitment to close a door on funding, and you wouldn't concur with that, that there's some ongoing initiative?
I'm not sure what he's like. I would have to have I've offered to have discussions, but that hasn't happened in the past, but I'd have to understand the details before I could comment.
Yeah, if I can provide a comment, back to the comment about grants and how they're allocated. So all the grant allocations are approved by the board. So we don't make decisions as staff of where to allocate grants. We make recommendations that get approved by the board. It is true that a lot of the grants, specifically CCBF, are being allocated to smaller services like fire departments and like water systems. And we make that recommendation because those services have no other way of having that significant funding, access to large amounts of funding, because they can't collect enough taxation. It wouldn't be reasonable to request those small service area tax high enough to get millions of dollars for infrastructure upgrades. But again, going back to your example, the B train example is where we're recommendation at this afternoon's board meeting to utilize CCBF funds that'll have a broad tax impact. So I think those are valid comments, generally speaking, around how the board allocates grant funding. And every time there's a decision of the board of how to allocate that grant funding, that's something the board can consider. But as staff, we're often recommending it go to these small services, because if it doesn't receive grants, it'll never happen.
Fox, you have a
Thank you, Chair. So to add to the comments of my peers here, the capital plan that's put forward has a number of different projects on it. They have many, many different funding sources. A large part of the projects that go forward have large components of grant funding that are applied. When we're looking at putting projects on that plan, there's a number of filters that it goes through for me to try and put a priority to it, to bring it to the board. Some of the things are asset rehabilitation and protection, service and benefit to the public, strategic importance, safety and risk management. Those types of projects typically rank higher. If we have large amounts of grant that can be put towards it, lots of times you can get grant matching grants for it. So strategically for the organization, that's how they're brought forward and recommended to the board. But there's no preference given, let's say, for one service over the other. It's more based on need, priority, safety, risk, health. Those types of things are layered in there. So we do try and give it a priority as to when it's coming to the board. So just wanted to add that piece on there. We give you recommendations of where we think we can access those large amounts of funds and try and follow the grant parameters that they give us where we can. That was around the grants. I think the second component of what Mr. Hildebrandt was bringing up was around utilities and funding utilities. So just to kind of give you Cole's notes on that, we have a general fund that is our general operations, our core services, that is tax funded. So there's other grants, taxes can be charged to pay for those services. The utility fund is user fee, and they're very specifically separate. So legislatively, for utilities funds, you charge user fees to collect revenue. Historically here at the TNRD, and this isn't uncommon, but there are some gray lines in there. They were running through EA utility admin when I first started, revenue that was coming in from the utilities to offset the costs that were running through there. So the administrative costs for utilities. So you can imagine wherever we charge a user fee, we have to use that user fee to pay for that service. So we have a number of utility services. They have direct charges allocated to them, but we have a number of staff and pieces of equipment and things that we do that don't just serve Savinaw or Pritchard. So we actually have a utility administrative function that gets allocated out to all the utilities. That administrative function at one point was running through the electoral area administration, and there was a bit of a difference there. So the revenue that was coming in was less than the expenses by, it was under $100,000 when I first started. Also, wages were being allocated to electoral area administration. And I think it's important because I think it just keeps coming up. Right away, we recognized, and I recognized that it'd be better and cleaner because it creates questions when you have utilities running through this general operating budget. So we removed that. We actually made moves to remove that $800,000 worth of expenses, $700,000 worth of revenue, and we kept it all in utility administration and allocated it out to the utilities. What we didn't fully move were the senior staff wages for the point that Mr. Hildebrandt is talking about. So what I did is I pulled a number of different regional districts, actually all of them. A number of them got back to me. Just to see what their process was for the allocation of wages. I feel pretty comfortable that we are allocating a majority of the wages directly to the utility services. I'm comfortable with that. I'm also comfortable with the fact that if we had no utility services, we still have to provide a service of researching, looking up utilities and doing all that. That's a component that belongs to the overall core of the organization. So keeping some of those wages under electoral area administration is what we've done at this point. I think there's about $170,000, but we've removed $800,000 that was flowing through there. So overall, I feel like we have made the right steps. We've done our due diligence to make sure that's appropriate and meets the legislative requirements to have utilities fees pay for utility services and taxation pay for tax services. Is it a little bit gray in there? Absolutely. And I've found that that seems to be common thread for other regional districts as well. So I felt comfortable just leaving it at this point. And I had told Jamie and Scott that if the board wasn't comfortable with how we're treating that now and trying to meet the legislation, that certainly the board can look at a different allocation for those wages. But that's how we've presented it at this time.
Thank you for that wholesome answer.
Thanks for that, CFO Fox. It was, I think it answered a lot of the questions that any of the board members had of how our utilities are looked after and funded. Any other roundtable coming from the directors? I just had a question around our advocacy. Do we have a line item in our budget now for that? Because it's a new service that we've seemed to have just sort of flowed into. It seems to be a very good service. So do we need a line item, or is where the funds actually coming from now? Is that something we need to look at into the next budget year?
There is a line item for it. I was just gonna quickly go and give you the exact amount. Is that the budget?
Yeah.
25?
Yep.
25,000. Under advocacy, which is a new item.
Is that sufficient funding to do what we're doing now? Or are we going to be expending more than that possibly as we move forward with our advocacy?
I think it was a guess right now, because this is new for us, but I think it's sufficient. And we'll adjust that, down if need be. But I think we were very efficient in our trip to Victoria from a cost standpoint. And I think we got a lot of value and benefit from it. So you'll hear a little bit more about that this afternoon at the board meeting.
Thank you. And I do have concerns around hearing how we could possibly looking at not sending EA directors to UBCM. I think it's a very important part of our elected representation to our communities. That's where you go and have the opportunity to hear any new information coming from the provincial government on so many different topics. And that's the only opportunity we have as directors to get caught up and understand exactly what our current government is giving direction, and can concern downloading, it can concern new services. It has very broad opportunity for our EA directors to go and get that information. And I think it's very important. I've been going to UBCM for a number of years, and I've always found at least one or two items that I can bring back and work at doing in our community. So I think it's very important we keep that for the board. And if we require other funding for advocacy, I would prefer to see it as a line item in a budget. Thank you.
Just to respond to that, I know that was part of a discussion, I think maybe at a committee of the whole or maybe an EA director meeting, but that budget has never changed. So that is not the case. It's exactly the way it was. And this is an additional 25,000 for the advocacy tour and then future advocacy in Victoria directly with ministers.
Thank you. Director Usel?
All good. It's fine. Thank you very much, Chair. Related to this topic of advocacy tours and such, I know obviously the board has voted on that and we've agreed to move forward. And we're always talking about staff time and resources. Are we asking, is staff able to fulfill all these new asks? Because I see Chair Roden there, I also wanted to maybe have Chair Roden give some thoughts as well. It would be considerate of us. I want to say thank you, for taking the time out of your responsibilities of many hats, as a municipal mayor and the chair, to represent our EA interests on your advocacy tour. I just want to make sure too that you're not, you don't feel being thrusted into this for us, taking away the time out of your community. And if you have any thoughts or comments with that.
Okay, happy to. Well, it gave me a chance to take a week's holiday from one of my other jobs, so that was good. They're always hounding me. Apparently, I have tons of holiday time saved up, and so I said, great, I'll take a week and go to Victoria. I thought it was very effective. It's really hard to gauge because we're still waiting to hear back on some of the things we raised, and because it's the first time the TNRD has ever attempted something like this. So I was very happy with how it went. I think that we were able to, we spoke almost exclusively about matters to do with electoral areas. And it's subjects that we have heard around this table, subjects that we have previously taken to UBCM, and this was really upping the game. You'll hear me say this again this afternoon. One of the most consistent things we heard from ministers and from staff in Victoria, from the province, was you managed to get 4 meetings with 6 ministers in one day, the day before the budget came out. That's amazing. So my sense, and perhaps CEO Hildebrand, you can correct me, my sense is that they do not get this happening a lot. They do not get certainly regional districts coming to Victoria the way that we did. And I think it made an impression in a good way, I hasten to add. So I think they really appreciated the fact that we were showing our seriousness about these matters by taking that time to come to Victoria. The other thing I liked about it, I mean, I know that people around the table here have commented on how effective they find the meetings with staff at UBCM, which are half an hour long, and which I think leave people with more of a sense that, yeah, they heard us and something's actually going to happen, than the 15-minute meet and greets with the ministers. And so we had fairly lengthy, I mean, we were scheduled for half an hour, but a couple of them went over that. Much more informal at the meeting with the Minister of Agriculture. After we'd finished talking about what we had to talk about, she said, okay, I'd like to ask your advice on this, not me personally, but all of 3 of us. From a regional district perspective, we're looking at changing the percentage of a property that has to be farmed in order for it to be classed as a farm. And so she was asking us, okay, what are your thoughts on this? We're trying to, get some information, get some feedback. So it was that kind of a relaxed and informal meeting. The other thing that I kept thinking about was in Victoria, or when you go to UBCM, there are 167 local governments in BC. Most of them are there. When it comes to things like the Minister of Transport, I'm guessing the Minister of Transportation sees between 120 and maybe 130 local governments in a 4-day period. You're not going to stand out from the crowd. This, I think, made us stand out from the crowd and showed them that we were serious, and I think got some of our concerns to higher up whatever lists they keep in Victoria about these things. CEO Hildebrand, you were there too?
Yeah, I can just add if I could. Meetings were very good. Most of the meetings were not with just the minister. It was either maybe 2 ministers, but also a whole group of staff as well. And a lot of them were zooming in from Kamloops and from other places. So it was interesting. Even one of the ministers, Minister Parmar, was actually zooming into one of the meetings. He goes, "You guys are here in Victoria?" I said, "Yeah, we're just in the other room." So he hung up and he walked down and came in and couldn't believe we were actually there. So it made a huge impression, and it was certainly you know, budget was mostly the focus in that 2-day period for the province, but the fact that TNRD was there, people knew we were there. They'd recognize us, they'd be waving at us, walking down the hallways of the legislature. So I think it went over really well. It was well received, and you know, doing that 2 or 3 times a year is well worth the money, in my opinion.
The other thing too, and two topics that come to mind regarding this is the egress routes and the pilot project for small water systems. As soon as the ministers heard us say, we've already done a lot of the groundwork, we've done a lot of the legwork, we've done a lot of the grunt work, if you will, you could see them visibly relax because they knew we weren't asking them to come in and do a lot of the hard graft on the ground. We were making it clear that we've already done a lot of the groundwork and that we're prepared to keep doing that. Because I think a lot of times when they are approached, whether it's at UBCM or elsewhere, people come in and say, we want this and we want Victoria to do all the work. And Victoria is thinking, well, we can't do all the work. So the fact that the TNRD is showing that we're willing to meet them in a certain place, we're not just coming and saying, give us time, give us money, give us resources, give us staff work, give us work. We're saying, hey, look, we realize this is an ask. And yes, we want something from you, but here's what we're prepared to bring to the table as well. That I think really helped a lot, especially with the minister, Jennifer, the one we spoke to about the water systems. She was very new to the portfolio. So a lot of time was spent sort of bringing her up to speed. But when she heard that we were prepared to take on the work of a pilot project, and the egress routes, the fact that we had started to do the work of identifying these routes and identifying what we want and where we want them. That was really big for them, or seemed to be, because I think it made the ask more realistic for Victoria when they realized that they're not doing all of the work.
Thank you. Any other questions from the directors? Any other roundtable discussions? Oh, Marnie.
Thank you, Chair Laird. As we do have a resolution on the table right now regarding the advocacy letter, if okay with Director Thorpe, would you be inclined to let us have this resolution die as Chair Roden will be addressing this afternoon in the regular board meeting?
Because we didn't vote on it.
Yes, we haven't voted on it.
Fish is
so-
going like this, so.
You're okay with that, Director Thorpe or Director Thorpe?
It's okay, Trisha's all right. Yes. My biggest concern is that we get it on the table and out there again so that EAs are not forgotten. Because our residents are important.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And if you don't mind, Director Thorpe, Director Sal, I have drafted a suggestion for a motion. So after this meeting, if you want to sit down, we can go over it and fine tune it and see, make sure it says what you want to convey. And then it's all ready to go to be deployed at the meeting this afternoon.
And if I could add, we're also going to add the 2023 letter to all the blue folders this afternoon. So there's a reference point. So it'll remind the board exactly what we wrote back then and then what we're going to propose going forward.
Good. Do we need to do anything else with that? Yeah, so good. Any other discussion from the directors as for roundtable discussion? In that, there's oh, it says number 7, adjournment. So I can't remember the process. Do we just adjourn now or do we have to, at one time you just said meeting adjourned. Is that the way we're doing it now?
You
Meeting
can adjourn the
adjourned.
meeting.
Oh, I don't bang gavels. Not my thing. Thank you very much.